Hey, greetings, everyone. This is Shadab here. Today, Jamie is not available. He had some conflicts, so could not join, but I'm here. Let's talk about this week. Let's start with a essay that Mark Zuckerberg had written. So we'll talk about that, what he's mentioning in that essay. It's a 6,500 word essay, so pretty long one. We will condense that for you. And then we'll talk about some of the news around how Nvidia is trying to do financial maneuvering to make sure that there is enough investment going in the AI infrastructure. And then Claude is among the first one to make sure that there is a invisible watermark that is in compliance with the new EU AI Act that is going live just on August 2nd. We'll also talk about various other launches that happen. For example, Meta Glimmer, and then some changes in Microsoft's Copilot apps. There were also some launches, like for example, Grok actually came up with a new model. And then there is something called Grokbot. There's Gemini 3.7 Flash, which is now available, and a bunch of other news along with it. Stay tuned for a quick introduction. Greetings. Welcome to the AI Files podcast. If you're looking to stay up to date on the AI, this is the podcast for you. I'm Shadab Hussain. I'm the director of AI at Microsoft, and I'm your co-host.
Hello, everybody. Jamie Basilico, as you know already. I'm the other co-host here for the AI Files. My day job is a data and AI technical specialist and architect. And as a reminder, please note this is not an official Microsoft channel, so the views and opinions expressed by myself and Shadab are our own and do not represent the views of Microsoft.
Future is for everyone. Yes, that's the title of the essay by Mark Zuckerberg, 6,500 words. So there's a lot to talk about there. But let's start with some of his own quotes. Quoting him, "It is surprising that the discourse from many developing AI is so filled with doom. I do not understand why anyone who believes that AI will eliminate most jobs and much of humanity's relevance would rush to build that future. The notion that AI is so dangerous that the only safe path is an extreme concentration of power seems inherently problematic. Historically, hoping that an absolute power will benevolently provide for humanity if sufficiently enlightened has not led to safe or positive outcome." Unquote. So there are a bunch of things that Mark actually addressed in this essay, right? He talks about, let's what we call as art of possible, right? For example, in terms of the impact that the superintelligence will make, which is what they're trying to develop in their lab. So, there are a bunch of things that he talk about it, how this will change the lives. So that's a typical tone that any of these essays generally take. They talk about the positive things in the life to come. Right. For example, he talks about everyone will have powerful tools to create new businesses, and the economy will become more entrepreneurial. Everyone will have a personalized tutor and coach with a PhD in every subject and unlimited patience to help you learn anything you want. Everyone will benefit from scientific advances and be able to contribute to scientific progress. For example, BioHub has already shipped open source biological models related to virtual cells and proteins that are helping scientists make new discoveries and design new drugs. Everyone will have free or affordable access to these tools. And on his part, he's talking about we must have the ability to use superintelligence to improve their lives and shape the world. We will offer free version that will be accessible to billions of people. And for those who want to pay to use more compute, there will be a dynamic auction mechanism that will guarantee that everyone gets the lowest price possible. So a bunch of things that he's talking about in that essay, right? But some of the important things in terms of the summary is he's saying that everyone should have access to their own personal superintelligence. It belongs to anyone and everyone. He also talks about invention over automation. He pushes back against the notion that AI's continued evolution will result in more human jobs being eliminated. He's more of a huge proponent of AI improving our lives by helping humanity discover new life saving drugs, for example. And he talks about a single benevolent AI is not the right way forward. It's not in favor of the concept of a single small group perfecting and controlling one single aligned superintelligence. That in view doesn't work. If only one person or a group has the access to that, they will be incredibly powerful. But if everybody has the access, it can kind of provide checks and balances. He also talks about Meta is in the process of building the best personal super intelligence, and of course, it aligns with their progress that they have made. For example, of the recent announcement of what they launched, Muse Glimmer, which is a small, just about 30 billion parameter model that you can actually download on the consumer hardware and run it. Right, so it's kind of like in the personal domain that people can run it. He also talks about how the America has to compete with its AI rivals, and Meta is helping communities and uh, rather than slowing the development of AI data labs. He's a stern supporter of world where America must build energy capacity and data centers faster in a bid to compete with China. He points to Meta launching a Future is for Everyone fund that is equipped to finally financially support the communities that house the data centers. He gives an example of a district in Louisiana where they're building the data center, and because of the tax revenues, how the school district is performing well because they're providing annual bonuses to the teacher, $50,000, and that is kind of sparking a lot of other teachers to move into that district. And soon they are projecting that that district will become one of the best school district, right? For example, so he's giving those kind of examples. But anyway, bottom line is, of course, all these essays convey their vision, but also they operate on the line of their business interest as well, which is what he's talking about. Now, this is not something new. Mark has written about similar essay on personal superintelligence just about a year ago as well. So nothing new, just a reiteration of their vision, I would say. One of the things that he talked about is on not to let monopolization of the AI. I would say my personal opinion on this is that I don't think people take Mark very seriously when it comes to this, because talking about not to let the AI being monopolized. Well, Mark, how about social media being monopolized? You control Facebook, WhatsApp, um, Instagram, and a bunch of other surfaces as well. So, and you're trying to keep that consolidation. How about that? Of course, you do not have that kind of a lead in the AI, so you're talking about it, but I would consider it more of honest if you say that okay, social media should also not be monopolized. Yeah, you have controlled that a lot. Social media has actually brought a lot of harm as well. Many of the places, including, I'll tell you, my own school district, where I am, my kids go to the school has actually banned the phone because it's just so much harmful effect. And we know that the harmful effect is not just about the phone; it's really about the apps on the phones, right? So there are many communities where social media is being given a fine. Actually, recently, there has been fine on the Instagram as well because social media makes it very harmful for the kids. So I think it would be more credible if these visions align with the actual realities that the companies live in. That's my personal thought. Anyway, move on. Let's talk about some of the news. NVIDIA guarantees that the resale value of its own chips um, to unlock $500 billion investment fund by companies like Apollo, BlackRock, Blackstone, Brookfield, Goldman Sachs, and KKR, who will create this financing platform to mobilize more than $500 billion of capital for AI data centers over time. Now, of course, that helps in the demand for NVIDIA. So NVIDIA is really pushing it as well. What they're bringing to the table, what they're saying is that, look, these GPUs have a long lasting lives. They don't age out that easily. There are many old ones still in the use. He gives an example of how the A100, for example, introduced in 2020, is still remain in commercial service 6 years later. And he's talked about the H100 rental pricing is rising from roughly $1.7 per GPU hour in 2025 October to about $2.35 in March 2026. Talking, basically giving an example of how the GPUs are rising in that value. What he's trying to do is he's trying to convince the investors that, okay, look, if you invest in this, the in case of the worst case is liquidation of those investment, and in that case you will not lose the value of those GPUs that you're going to actually buy is not going to be lost. And if the value of those GPUs are lost for some reason, Nvidia will pitch in with their own funds to cover the shortfall up to 25% of that shortfall, right? So they're trying to put their um, money in where they believe the value lies of their GPUs. So in order to basically convince investors that the AI data centers are a good investment. And this actually goes hand in hand with another news that happened recently, where Citadel, this saw the investment fund is started by one of the former OpenAI, um, engineer who, like billions of dollars of funds in the investment for the AI data center. It actually lost a lot of its value recently, and it was finally sold off. So anyway, um, so now the market did not really receive this news very well, because they believe that this is kind of creating a circular economy. Something similar example was drawn about Lucent Technology. Those who are old enough to remember, Lucent Technology was a great name. They were actually funding a lot of equity, like equipment, like for companies to buy their own equipments, which are basically in the networking and the telecom sectors. And ultimately they went toss up, because it just created, they were just funding their own, like the purchase or the sell off of their equipment. So ultimately that company was actually bought off. So, and it aligned with the dot-com crash, by the way. So there was some examples drawn similar to that. um, Denson Wang actually went on live and he clarified that it's not like that, things like that, why it is safer, etc. The market is concerned because in the case the value of the GPUs go down, you're having kind of a double jeopardy, that your demand is basically reducing, and you're ending up committing your own cash to actually cover the shortfall, right? So there's a double jeopardy there. Anyway, I think time will tell how this will pan out. Moving on, Claude's text now carries a watermark that survives copy and paste. Yes. So let's talk about that. And this is a very interesting concept. I want to actually explain that here a little bit. So August 2nd was the deadline when EU AI Act went live in terms of the compliance for the AI transparency. Okay. So what they are demanding is that when the developers and providers are generating text or images or any artifact, there should be a watermark on that one. And there should be a way to actually identify that this has been created. Now, it could be either visible or it could be invisible, tamper proof, right? So, in case of invisible, of course, there has to be a way to actually kind of decode that as well. But anyway, this is interesting what Claude has done. So what Claude is saying is, the Anthropic is saying that the any generation, let's say whether it's an image or a text in particular, when you generate that, it will have an invisible watermark. Now, invisible means like, no, this is not a hidden character. This is not something previous character inserted into it, etc. The concept is like this. So when you have to generate a text, the model has to generate, it works based on the probability, right? So when the sentence go like that, well, the weather forecast today is um, overcast and, right? So when the next word has to be predicted after that and, it will be something similar to, most likely, cloudy or gray. Now, that probability is generally random. On a random basis, the model decides which one to go, because both are very interchangeable. Now, what they're saying is these kind of decisions are made, probabilistic decisions are made continuously in the generation. But by rather than using a random number to decide those, if we use some sort of a pattern, then that will be identifiable or recognizable using some sort of a decoding. So, for example, they give an example of, let's say, if you use some specific digit in the like the pi, right, the number pi, which goes on and on and on forever. And for the next decision, they use the next digit, for example, and it goes on. So a decoder should be able to identify that this seems like there's a pattern being followed rather than being random. And that's how the watermark will be understood. So this is called invisible watermark. There is no extra character. They are also saying that no, there will be no extra token generated for this. So there is no extra cost for this. And when you copy and paste, of course, it carries forward because it's hidden in that one, in the sense that it's a pattern. So now, of course, there are certain cases in which it will not work, right? For example, you take that Claude generated text, for example, and somebody rewrites. Like if you do a light editing, the pattern can still be identified. But if you do heavy editing on top of that, it will lost its that pattern, and you will not be able to identify. But then they'll argue that it anyway can probably not be classified as AI generated anymore if it has been heavily edited after that. So that is the concept. Now for the images, it's easy. They use something called C2PA based credentials, which is basically a encrypted meta data that you can be inserting, which is what a lot of the photographic equipment, etc., they do as anyway. So that's a concept, and that's what so beware whether you will be interested in using and copying and pasting exactly what the AI is generating. Beware about that, because soon they will be providing the APIs, etc., as well. And like everybody has to do, it's not just Anthropic. Everybody will have to do the same thing. So it will be traceable. Now, the traceability is not to the individual. Traceability is only saying that, okay, this has been generated by, let's say, Claude models. That's about it. But it's not traceable to the individual or the enterprise. Anyway, let's move on to the next one. Next news, we'll talk about um, the Microsoft's merging of its Copilot apps and killing some of the features. So Microsoft has confirmed it's merging the consumer Copilot app and the Microsoft 365 Copilot app into one application, and they will be killing off some of the features like some free deep research or AI generated podcast. Nobody's using it. Looks like the people love the AI files finally, of course, and like features like that. You remember Clippy? Clippy used to be that animated character, and likewise there was another one, Myco, that was also Microsoft, like a short form for Microsoft Copilot. Myco was the animated blob mascot, and that's also going. Bye bye, Myco. So this is also a trend that is being followed in terms of multiple organizations are doing the same thing. For example, ChatGPT Codex has been merged together. Operator has also been built into the ChatGPT. Similarly, Anthropic is also folding the Cowork into Chat, and that's what you're seeing. Multiple features are being, it's kind of creating the super app because it's easier for user to use it rather than having these fragmented apps, etc. People lose context. People want the same context as well, and then they lose track of all these different things. That becomes difficult. I think Copilot has a great advantage because it's part of the enterprise apps. It can be simply a button everywhere. I like it that way because if I'm in the PowerPoint or if I'm in the Excel, there is a button there, and if I click on that one within that context, it can operate. Now, what I want to make sure that is not different in terms of the capability from the Microsoft 365 Copilot, right? So it should be same Copilot across, and that's the direction that Microsoft is heading. Even in enterprise apps like, for example, Fabric, etc., they will basically provide the similar integration with Microsoft Copilot. So that will become a surface through which you can operate all the Microsoft apps, which is, I think, a great move, and it is required. Anthropic is also putting, now they did some experiment, basically, Anthropic, and they put some agents in the same room, and they started fighting, right? Basically, they're trying to fight over the control. So what happened, it was an experiment done by Anthropic Research. They put like three agents, one uh, powered by Mythos, and another with Sonnet 4.6, and third was Opus 4.6. They were given certain tasks, but they were not told that the other agents were also operating on it. And very soon the fight escalated. So they were trying to vie for the control, writing the code to harm each other. But often, particularly Mythos model was actually more interested in finding the truth. They were like suggesting, let's do a tournament to decide this. So bunch of the tactics that they were actually trying to deploy to gain the control on that project, right? Fascinating experiment, I would say. Moving on, OpenAI is actually losing a lot of people. OpenAI has lost Brad Lightcap and Denise Dresser in 3 days. Um, I don't know what is going on. Generally, when there is so much churn going on, something big is happening, which we would not know. But there has been actually some churn. Fiji Simo recently stepped down from her role because of the health issues. Brad Lightcap, who used to be a CFO, then turned into COO and recently a special projects lead, has just announced his departure. And then very soon, Denise Dresser, who was the chief revenue officer, she was there for just 8 months. So this is a little bit of the unexpected departure. So anyway, I think something is going on. We don't know what. Talk about some of the launches. Meta has shipped a 30 billion agent model that you can run locally. We talked about this a little bit in the beginning. Meta has released Muse Glimmer. It's a model that you can download under Apache 2.0, and you can run it on the consumer hardware as well, right? So your machine, your phone, your anywhere you can actually run that. So it's aligned basically with the personal super intelligence kind of vision that we talked about. All right, Gemini 3.7 Flash. It is a Google's workhorse tier that is now getting a generational jump. Basically, Google on August 13th, they have released that in the Gemini API, and it's the most capable model from them for coding and agents in the efficient tier rather than as a flagship. So they have published a comparison against 3.6 Flash, etc. Much better. A lot of the benchmarks are pretty good, and the pricing is pretty good as well. It's like 75 cents per million input tokens. Now, the pricing in this case is time bound. Like for example, through December, it is 75 cents per million input token, and after that, it will double up to 1.5. So I think this is a new kind of a pricing strategy that they've put the date on how long this discount will last, and then everybody's aware that after that it will increase. So it's an experiment that they will try to see how this is received well. Okay, another launch is Grok 4.6, long running agents, and SpaceX AI is released this, and it is focused on long running agentic work, coding, and visual or interactive projects. The company report that it matches GPT 5.6-sol on the Artificial Analysis Intelligence Index. A lot of benchmark play there. I'm sure it's a good model, etc. And in terms of the training detail, it has a longer supplemental pre-training run than 4.5. So more training, more pre-training has been done on this one. It is available in Cursor, Grok Build, Space XAI API, and things like that, like Vercel and Cloudflare, etc. The price starts at $2 per million input and $6 per million output. And there's a fast variant as well. Now, the thing is this, I'm sure this is a good model, but will this be adopted? I doubt so. The reality is, because of Elon Musk's politics and his own behavior, I think has really upset a lot of people and the enterprises as well. This is not about the capability. It doesn't matter what your benchmark is. Your benchmark may be, twice as good as the next one. But people, what I've come across is people have decided they're not going to use it. It is similar to what you see here in the Tesla cars inventory. Nearby to my house, there is an open parking lot where they used to park the Tesla. Now it's full of it. The inventory is just not moving. That's why the Tesla cars demand has gone down. The same is with the Grok. It's not really about the benchmark. I think this is a great lesson for everybody that keep the politics close, and make sure that you're not going against the society. You may, like you need to be very careful with what political ideology that you align with if you are a entrepreneur or a business. They also actually launched something called Grokbot. It's an agents with their own cloud computer. Think of it like a kind of a Copilot based approach where you have some agents running full time with their own computer or computing resources, and you just message them that, okay, hey, do this, like send this, right? And they keep the context. They learn from your pattern as well. In fact, you can record what you're doing, and they can watch and see the what kind of workflow that you have followed and what you have done, and next time they'll be able to do it themselves. So it's like a bot network. Everybody can have their own personal bots, Grok bots. It's available for Super Grok Heavy, Cursor Ultra, and Cursor Teams Premium subscribers. It is a bot which can actually sign into the tools that you already use. So you can use it to delegate not just tasks, but actually the entire workflow that you do. So it's, I think, a good basically the branding, and it's basically an agent that is running, and it is keeping the context, and it is keeping the learning that you have. Moving on, OpenAI ultrafast mode, GPT-5.6 sol at up to 14x speed. And this is a new mode that OpenAI has launched. It's kind of a, like, for the you need to basically opt in. You need to sign up to get this access, and of course the pricing is not revealed, so we don't know what the pricing would be. It must be expensive for sure. It won't be the same as the standard pricing. The bottom line is that the underlying infrastructure is different, right? This is not NVIDIA GPUs, etc. This is actually Cerebra's infrastructure. So Cerebras, they have their own GPUs. Cerebras is a company that has taken a slightly different approach. What they have said is, rather than having all these different chips, etc., and then connecting them, right? It removes the efficiency. So they have actually created a process to rather create a large chipset all on one chip, right? The entire circuit is on one chip, and that, as per them, is extremely efficient. So it is a difficult process to manufacture, but it's very efficient. That's a approach that Cerebras has taken. Recently, actually, their stock had taken some hit because while their software is doing well, their hardware actually sale was kind of like not as encouraging. It was so their stock actually went down significantly. They have limited customer, but I think with this probably they will get some boost because if this becomes popular, then they will get some more demand. Now, ultrafast, of course, will be expensive. As I said, we don't know the pricing yet, but some of the use cases could be, for example, fast incident management, right? You have some, let's say, bug or production issue going on, and you want to investigate fast. You need the speed there, and that's where these kind of service may come actually handy. Microsoft AI has also actually revealed a bunch of models. So, for example, Code 1.1 Flash, which is now available in the GitHub Copilot. You can use it. It's very efficient. It has 22% improvement on terminal bench and 15% on .NET tasks. Very specific surgical improvement that Microsoft has done on this one because they have observed, they have taken the feedback from the market where people want to see the improvement, and that's what they have actually focused on. But apart from that, a bunch of other models were also actually launched by Microsoft AI. For example, there was a 2.6 image that also actually is doing very well. It's number two on Arena, ahead of Google, Meta, and other models. Is actually right behind GPT image. So pretty good model. There is also this Microsoft AI Cyber One Flash, which is also a very good model. This is actually used inside MDash, which is the multi-agent vulnerability identification and remediation harness. And this model is basically used within the MDash system by Microsoft to identify the vulnerabilities, etc. Okay, very good in terms of the capabilities. It's very comparable with Mythos 5, GPT 5.5 Cyber, GPT 5.6 Sol, Gemini 3.5, etc. Okay, let's talk about a company this week. We sometimes used to do this segment, Company of the Week. This week, let me talk about Fireworks AI. So, Fireworks AI is basically a company that has been focused on providing the open weight models, right? Basically, take the open weight models and make them extremely efficient. That's what the motto of the company is. Okay, so that's take the best open models and run them extremely efficiently. They do it by using something called Fire Optimizer. This is their key technology, and what it does is it provides a low latency, high throughput, efficient GPU utilization, etc. So it's fast, it's very efficient, and it's also cheaper sometimes. And it is anyway effectively cheaper because you can actually gain the value by using very fast and efficient, right? So maybe less tokens will be used, etc. Um, Microsoft has done a first party agreement with Fireworks AI. The other clouds like AWS and GCP have like a third party agreement. So there's some difference there. What Fireworks does is it takes the best of the open weight models. For example, from DeepSeek, Kimi, recently Kimi K3 was also added from Moonshot AI, Minimax, GLM, Mistral, Quen, OpenAI, and Google's own open weight models as well. They are taken. You can also bring your own custom weight models as well and run it on the Fire Optimizer. So that's a value proposition of this company where you can run your open weight models efficiently and effectively, more cheap. With that, I would say I think this week is kind of over. So Keep listening and keep sharing the word about AI files in your network. And if there is any feedback, please let us know. Happy to hear and make changes. With that, bye everyone.